joins us on the show right now from the Shoot Us Gun and Knife Shop in Tyler, Texas, Mac Woods. And Mac, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program tonight.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Ran across this story from KYTX, Michelle Reese, yesterday, CBS 19. Now, I got to tell you, Mac, first of all, I'm a little disturbed by the bias in this story. Right off the bat, the government says 87% of weapons recovered by Mexican authorities come from the U.S. That's not the case, and we know that that's not the case, Mac, but I guess you had to start the story somehow. That's how the reporter decided to do it. The subject of this story, though, talking about these proposed requirements by the ATF that would force you, every time somebody came in and bought a rifle and a shotgun, you would actually have to start filling out more paperwork, submit that paperwork to the ATF. Is that right?
That seems to be pretty much the size of it. Of course, our society is already overwhelmed with laws and rules and regulations. We seem to be kind of slow to pick up on the idea that that outlaws have a reason for their name. Outlaw means that they operate outside the law, so the people that are misusing weapons don't really care about our rules and regulations, and I suspect that making more of them is going to accomplish very little.
Yeah, and this regulation, the proposed regs anyway, would apply not to FFLs across the country, but in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas only. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm really confused about that, and I'm not a lawyer, but I've talked to several lawyers about that since the issue came up, and nobody can seem to get a handle on the idea how you're going to impose a federal statute on just a few states that happen to be border states. I think that would be a real curiosity to figure out.
Yeah. Have you heard? Have you talked to anybody at ATF, or have you made any inquiries about why, let's say, just up the I-35 corridor, why Oklahoma FFLs are not going to be subject to this?
No, I have not talked with anyone but the government, but it is a big question why you would try to levy some kind of legislation or rulemaking just on a few states. I'm not a lawyer, but I've not ever heard of any thing being done like that at the federal level just on a few states.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I got to tell you, I have not heard of any similar types of regulations that would apply only to FFLs in a few states. And then there's the issue that there really is no regulatory authority for the ATF to do this under the provisions of the Gun Control Act of 1968. That's where the multiple reporting of handguns came in, but there is no authority for ATF to impose these requirements, at least as far as NRA can find.
Right. Well, regulatory agencies have a broad brush they paint with, and sometimes they do a good job, sometimes they don't. My experience with the folks here in my area has been very good. I have to say that I don't have any complaints. They look to me for help from time to time, and I look to them for help from time to time, and I really think that's probably the way it should be. If we would all try to kind of work a little bit more together instead of against each other, maybe we could do something. And I don't have many answers for you about this forced state thing and the gun transporting across the border thing, but I do have some questions. I'm really curious why such a huge focus is being put on that when we have a gushing artery of crime that's coming not from the north, from Texas or
right.
Arizona or California, but coming from the south into the United States. Tons of drugs, tons of illegal weapons, tons of people who are engaged in human trafficking, which we used to call slavery. I'm kind of confused why those issues don't seem to attract nearly as much attention as some guns that do seem to get loose from here from time to time and maybe end up in the wrong hands.
Well, and as you pointed out, you and I think, the vast majority of FFLs out there want to have a good working relationship with ATF, but I don't know how closely you've been following, Mac, the story of Operation Fast and Furious, where in Arizona there were FFLs who were told by ATF to to let suspicious sales proceed. And eventually those guns ended up in the hands of the Mexican drug cartels after the ATF had authorized these sales, which is, again, this is something that the ATF really doesn't want to talk about. They'd much rather talk about the new regulatory requirements they want to impose.
Right.
But, the bottom line is if somebody comes into your store and you've got concerns about it, you can deny that sale, and you can certainly contact ATF and say, hey, look, I've got some concerns with the individual who's in my shop, right?
Absolutely, and I do that. I've got a 25-year history of doing that, as do most of the other older shops that I'm familiar with in my area. We all are family-owned shops. We all don't want criminals to have guns. We all don't want to add to the crime situation, and we all take it upon ourselves to do everything we can, even beyond what the statutes have to say, to prevent those kind of things from happening. And I've done that many times, and I'm sure my peers in this area have done the same thing.
Yeah. So the notion that somehow you're not doing this, or that if these regs were imposed, that all of a sudden there'd be a huge sea change, you and your fellow FFLs are already talking to law enforcement.
Oh, absolutely. We everyone I know has a very good relationship, and we all get along very well. We help each other, and we all really have one common goal. We're all, in my area here, we're all family people, and we all want to have a safer, saner community to live in, which includes, among other things, guns, but certainly that's not all, but drugs and crime in general. We want to have a safe community to live in.
Absolutely. Well, Mac, again, sir, thanks for coming on the program tonight. Good talking to you, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Well, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Mac Woods joining us from the Shoot Us Gun and Knife Shop in Tyler, Texas.